when starting out building innovation on Bitcoin, right? It's seen more as money as hard money. Now it's more useful
Yes.
money.
It's looking in two way, right? Like, okay, there are a set of people who are making Bitcoin programmable.
But have institutions adopted Bitcoin as a building layer?
Even VCs are there. VCs also, of course, they are there. They are there. In East Denver, what I observed, like a lot of VCs were like, oh, okay, what is this Bitcoin? Like, what is this ecosystem? Like, what are they doing? Like, there were very few Bitcoin events happening.
Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another interview, another podcast in the PYOR series. Today is a very interesting episode because in the previous episodes, we've spoken to people within the Ethereum, within the Solana space, and also a VC who's investing in several protocols. I don't think they're specific on one. Today, we're talking to someone who's building at the very foundation of crypto at the Bitcoin layer. And I certainly want to know a lot about it because uh, I'm a little uneducated on that topic, and Yash here is here to educate me on it. And Yash is a good friend. Yash is the co-founder and CEO of Surge or Surge Build, depending on if you've seen them on Twitter. Surge is a rollups as a service provider on Bitcoin. He has had a lot of experience in the crypto space. He was the chief product officer at Frontier Wallet. It's one of the OG wallets back in the day, which I think is still running now. He's taking the learnings there of building a ground up wallet and is now implementing it with Surge, where he's helping teams launch rollups using Bitcoin as a security layer. I might have got that slightly wrong, but Yash is here to correct me and educate me on the Bitcoin lens. So welcome, Yash. Welcome to the show. And thanks for taking this time. And did I get a fair description of Surge, or would you like to fill us in?
No, I mean, you did a good job. I mean, thanks for having me. It's always glad to like connect and talk to you. Starting from, I think we worked before as well at your previous venture. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Great. So let's establish some
Yeah,
context for the folks who are
sure.
uninitiated on the Bitcoin lens. Now, Bitcoin, most people see it as hard money, as a
Yeah.
sort of security against stuff that will happen throughout the world. But people are building various layers on Bitcoin. Layers is probably a word that people use in the crypto space, but these are ways to use Bitcoin in a more useful manner. Can you explain how that's sort of going about right now?
I think it's been like 2 years, right? Everybody is kind of figuring out what can we do more on Bitcoin, right? Even if you look at how things have evolved in Web3, right? I mean, Bitcoin happened, so it was this period where it was just Bitcoin, there was nobody else. I mean, Ethereum got inspired by Bitcoin, right? I mean, Bitcoin didn't have like programmability and then whole this use case of DeFi, which is decentralized finance, came up with this whole simple, idea of, oh, okay, we can have contracts, we can execute them in like a decentralized way. I mean, that was whole idea of Ethereum. I mean, Vitalik was doing Bitcoin Max and before, and then they ended up. I mean, it's very straight. Like they got inspired by what Bitcoin did as a sound money. I mean, it has a lot of names, right? It's been called like as a digital gold. It's sound money. It's like a global remittance system. It's the ultimate settlement layer, etc. Right? So, but Bitcoin being Bitcoin like for a very long time till probably the inscription came in and the ordinals kind of kicked in very recently. Of course, it happened with for a reason. It's a little different than Ethereum, right? I mean, Ethereum community is pretty active. I mean, you put up a proposal and then you come up with like a lot of these ideas. You keep like iterating, like you. I mean, Ethereum recently made a like a huge pivot from POW to like POS. I mean, where did it came from? Like, I mean, it's Bitcoin, right? I mean, Bitcoin is POW still, right? I mean, that pace of development is very much needed if Ethereum, or I mean, as Ethereum is aiming to be the decentralized finance ultimate like layer, right? Or like a global computer for finance. That absolutely makes sense. But Bitcoin is very different. I mean, if you want to like push any change, it's not going to open overnight, right? It's so much decentralized. I mean, so much, right? So if you want to like do any change, I mean, it's open source. Anybody come and do stuff. But it's a lot different than how we see things in Ethereum ecosystem, right? Or be it any ecosystem for that matter, because Bitcoin is the only one which probably is most decentralized compared to anything else, right? So it all started with, of course, like hard forks. I mean, hard forks never worked out. A lot of these hard forks happened, and they are all their own coins now. Be it like the Bitcoin Cash and all these guys. But I think the soft fork that happened in 2017, and then the one happened recently with Taproot, really opened up like a lot of new possibility. I mean, Bitcoin also has programming language, or I mean, I would not call it programming language, it's scripting language, script, right? They call it script. Like in Ethereum case, it's Solidity, there it's script. I think the functionalities are limited, but it is there for a purpose, right? And now, whatever we are seeing, that you can't do a lot of stuff on Bitcoin, but you can leverage on the strength of like being the most decentralized and secure, network, and you can build on it. Like I think all this is being inspired by, of course, Ethereum. Like Ethereum even like grew up in the same way. I think that's the moment the Bitcoin is going through right now, right? So people are figuring out what do I do more on Bitcoin, by drawing all the strength of Bitcoin and whatever we have as a learnings, or like what we have, like for example, like rollups have worked out to a larger extent, like the modularity has worked out to a larger extent on the Ethereum space. I think kind of clubbing all this together and building innovation on it.
When starting out building innovation on Bitcoin, right? It's seen more as money as hard money. Now it's more useful
Yes.
money, like money that you can
Yep.
use. Like how is useful money structured? Useful money is structured with being able to save, being able to invest, being able to
Yes.
insure,
Yes.
being able
Yep.
to
Yes.
pay for things like through
Yep.
micropayments and bunch of things.
Yep.
Now, how does that start off? How is that's more of a foundational change, like you said, it's more of a community-driven change because it's so decentralized in its nature. So how does one go about building that? And what was sort of the first way to scale Bitcoin that actually succeeded? Now, these hard folks, like you mentioned, didn't succeed, or they're still trying to succeed. I'm not sure how you claim it, but what was the first way that it actually succeeded?
I mean, on the scaling side, I think Lightning Network is the closest one, right? I mean, they are actually called an L2, the Lightning Network, which kind of, whenever there's a surge when there was a surge in the whole inscription and like ordinals, even like Binance kind of switched to like, Lightning Network to like reduce the cost, right? It's so high. Um, I think the most proven would be, I would say, Lightning Network. And Stacks is kind of doing a lot of work on the Bitcoin space. Like, I mean, these are like some probably big names who are there for a very long time and been working on it. I
Hmm.
mean, these are like, I would say as an example or inspiration of, oh, I mean, there is a way. There can be a lot can be done on Bitcoin. Yeah.
Now, with that context established, what is Surge? Like, what exactly are you setting out to build with Surge?
I mean, I'm sure like you have heard of rollup-as-a-service, right? In the Ethereum space. So now, in Bitcoin, in the context of Bitcoin, I mean, ZK rollup, right? Technically, like ZK rollups were discussed, like you can trace back to like Satoshi time, right? People being like discussing about it, like okay, the ZK rollups is like possible. I mean, that's one of the probably a mature uh, stack within like Bitcoin to like kind of scale Bitcoin. A lot of people, like a lot of teams are working on it, right? So at the end of the day, what is a rollup? It's a type of blockchain, right? It's just that it doesn't have its own security, or like it doesn't have its own things. It just settles on Bitcoin, or it out settle on the L1. That's why it's L2 or rollup, right? Why do we don't like fully call out an L2? Like it's still a rollup, right? So it's still like kind of doing all that off chain and settling it on the underlying L1, which in this case is Bitcoin. So what we head out like to solve search. I mean, you can see at least in last a year, there's so many roll-up teams which came in and said that, hey, we are building a Bitcoin L2 or Bitcoin roll-up. A lot of them have their own unique use cases. Some of them, like, yeah, multiple of them have like same use case, like DeFi. Hey, I'm gonna like unlock the dormant BDC that is sitting idle, right? I mean, there are so many stories that people are trying to solve, or like the problem statement that they are trying to solve. But all of them are missing is still nobody is settling on Bitcoin,
Mhm.
right? Because is there a way to settle on Bitcoin? Yes. I mean, the inscription is the closest way you can go ahead with. But has anybody has still cracked it? No. But has there been a significant progress done? Yes, right? So now, if everybody kind of like try to figure out on their own way, like just think about your ability to like even launch and even try your use case. I mean, use cases come actually like use case, right? Like for a roll up, use case is important. It's not the underlying tech, right? If you have to spend months of engineering effort and development, and then like deploy a roll up, make sure it works, and then think about distribution, think about roll up, use case. I mean, it's not happening, right? I mean, that's not how like things would work if you really want to take this forward at a certain pace. I mean, you need to like manage certain pace, right, to like do things, right? So I think that's where we see us as a savior, like where we're gonna cut down that entire engineering effort that they need, right, to launch the roll up, and they can actually focus on their use case, right? Be it bringing TVL or be it bringing liquidity on chain or like onboarding dApps or focusing on their own specific use case that they are planning for, right? So that's what Surge is up to. Like, we are putting together all that required infrastructure in place where it kind of makes it easy for them to spin up a roll up with the preferred stack that they want to go ahead with, which is like ZK rollup. I mean, ZK is movie. I mean, there are so many rollup stacks out there today, right? With whatever has been done so far on the Ethereum space side. Yeah, that's it's just making all this work, and so we have something called Super Stack, which is a L1 with a POS based L1, which is actually going to act as a verification layer because ultimately, like what happens in a rollup, right? So you have off-chain compute, which there is a sequencer which takes all the transactions and bundle it into like one block, and then that is like putting that into the L1, right? And then L1 actually has the verification capability, which is not the case with Bitcoin, right? So we need to like, when you don't have it, you just supplement it, right? So how we are doing it, like we have Super Stack, which is the layer which will do the verification. And we are of course adding more utilities like, a bridging BTC with MPC-TSS, which is much more trust minimized compared to like, a multi-sig or a, federated approach. And then like we aim to like add more utilities down the line, all right, which kind of makes it useful for rollups to be who they want to be, rather spend more time on building and launching.
Yeah, I've seen that with your product suite. You have a bunch of things. You have your dev testnet, which is more on the developer side, less on the use case side. You have a Bitcoin wallet as well. I think it's called Bitviper.
Yeah, so
Uh,
yeah, we just have all that to like, just the tools like that people can at least come and try. There's not much, it's very easy to like undermine it because we have seen so much on the Ethereum space. And if you look at, just look at it this way, right? There are ex-developers in Web3, right? What do they know? Most of them know Ethereum, right? Or like any other like Cosmos or like be it, Polkadot or like some other ecosystem, right? So that's what they know. And what's the growth rate of that development community? Like in whole, I'm talking about Web3 whole, like it is not so impressive to be honest, right? I mean, that's what even like we as the industry are struggling for, right? And so many things going on. I mean, there's so many things going on the regulatory side and so many things going on the the user side of like what's the demand. I mean, we are talking about supply. That supply is the engineers, like supply is the developers who will come in and like innovate. So now just think about Bitcoin. My God, that will be like probably what, like so less compared to the other ecosystem, right? So the idea is like, have the necessary tools and things that will make them to like even try out. How do you even, experience, like, for example, like when I started, how did I even like experience? I mean, like you said, Frontier was one of the OG wallet, and I think it was the first mobile wallet, which was like a mobile native wallet for Web3, again, like cross multi ecosystem. um, I first installed it. I tried it. Like I tried a developer version first and like, trying with testnet and doing all that. I think that's how you kind of get interest and get involved. And even for developers, the same thing, right? So that's how I think the whole idea is like put all the tool together so that teams can come and try out. Then we can help them and, probably end up in a commercial engagement, right? And make them clients.
so if there was a young developer listening to this and they've only
Yeah.
heard of workshops specifically to Ethereum, Solana, maybe Ethereum L2s or side chains like Polygon or Arbitrum,
Yep.
and
Yep.
they only want to build through that, they only want to learn, say, Solidity and Rust, how would you tell them, how would you convince them to say that, hey, there's a large Bitcoin ecosystem, I'm sure you've heard of it if you've heard of Ethereum, but you've not built on it because you probably don't think that there are tools that allow you to build on this. How do you
Yep.
convince this person to switch?
See, I would definitely not ask him to like switch, right? So what's happening in Ethereum right now, right? So there is, I mean, I feel like it is a little bit saturated at the moment, right? Yes, I mean there is a lot of things to be done, but it's a bit like saturated, like to kind of begin with for from a developer standpoint, right? And I'm sure he's already checking out Bitcoin, right? With whatever is happening right now, I'm sure, if he's not, then I'm sure like he's not a developer in Web3 space. People, it has actually, at least turned heads. I mean, come on, like, I mean, it has become a deep national debate in US election now, right? So, I mean, developers are interested, right? But where do they start? I mean, that's the challenge, right? Where do they start? That's the challenge. I mean, in Ethereum, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you have testnet, all this, and the kind of pattern remains same, right? Like there's an account model, like here it is UTXO model. Like, you need to like first understand some basics. You need to like first go and transact. Like for you to like go and get your test bitcoins, it's so hard to be honest, right? So that's where like we have built all this testnet because it will max out like 21 mil. That's it. It will max out. Somebody puts up a test net and like it max out so quickly because you just start like mining, claiming, and then you're out of it, right? So the ones that are probably credible or like a lot of people have, in the sense of what is credible, right? A lot of people have used it, are all maxed out. So in that sense, we kind of put out this tool so that they can get started and try and probably reach out to us or like look into our docs and talk to us. So that's what I would say.
And have you gone on ground and spoken to any developer about this?
We have. So we kind of like did that, and now we are so we're also like adding up as much as possible. So I think the way we have structured internally is there are like two tracks, right? So one is build what your customers want. Like we actually like have already closed customers. So the idea is like build what they want, right? First, right? So that's a huge validation for us. If your customer goes testnet, mainnet, that's a huge validation for us, right? And we have this developer channel where we want to encourage developers to come and look at our stack, try different tools that we have built, like kind of like more. Uh, I mean, if a developer on the opposite side, which is our customer, if he feel comfortable with the stack that we are building, then it's a check mark, right? Even like if the whole management says, hey, let's go ahead with search, right? If developers say, hey, no, I'm not comfortable, like, you're gone, right? So we feel like, being active in developer community and supporting them with whatever form we can, like, we are on it. Like, that's very important for us. That's super important for us.
And when these developers come in, or when these clients of yours come in and they start using Bitcoin as a security and a de facto utility layer through the rollup, right?
Yeah.
What do you see them building? Like, where is the applications? Where are the applications sort of springing up? We've seen a few innovations with ordinals, like you mentioned, inscriptions, various token standards, and even runes, the marketplace. But I'm sure it's evolved beyond that as well. So where do you see applications being built with Bitcoin?
So one is there's a lot of this, inspired by Ethereum and kind of recreate the same thing on the Bitcoin side with the liquidity on Bitcoin, right? It's a little bit tricky, right? Because uh, I mean, the Bitcoin holders are not me. I'm not sure they are degens, right? It's not like Ethereum or like not like the typical crypto side of things. But there's a lot of inspiration that is happening from that side. Right? People are coming and trying to build. Oh, okay, I'm building a DEX. Okay, I'm building this, particular primitive, right, on the financials. I think DeFi is still like one of the use case that people are exploring and the teams are exploring. Another interesting case we have come in like is like a app specific rollups, right? It does like one thing, right? So we have like one customer that we are working with. They are kind of trying to build like a social fi kind of use case on Bitcoin. Why? Because I mean Bitcoin resonates, right? Like people get Bitcoin. Like if you're going and talking like what are the chances that you're going and talking to like a Joe, ordinary Joe, and say like, hey, we are building on Bitcoin. So they're gonna get it like better than like if you say I'm building on Ethereum, right? So I think for a normal day-to-day user, like Bitcoin strikes better than Ethereum because of the brand equity, right? Like Bitcoin has the highest brand awareness or among general public, right? So that's another kind of use case that we are seeing where people are trying to build different like use case like a social file, right? Recently, we happened to like speak to a team which is trying to build a roll up or a gamify kind of use case, right? Um, you know, gamify like another like use case. I mean that I mean, in Web3, there are dedicated chains who are just solving for gamify, right? And we have seen teams working on that as well. And we have even seen like teams on an institutional side, like, who are even Web2, they want to do roll up because they have some reward program in Bitcoin and they can't do it on Bitcoin, right? Because it's so expensive to do it. So they are exploring rollups. Or like, something that will make it easy for them. I mean, Lightning Network is so hard to work with. So, that's how there are, I mean, we have seen spectrum of, use cases that are coming in. Not just because, I mean, as a roll up, you really need like a solid underlying settlement layer so that you can probably like reconstruct when things go wrong or like do all that math you want to do. But also because it has like better brand presence. You are like a lot more comfortable. I mean, what are the chances, right? Like just think about it. Like what are the chances of underlying layer going through a huge upgrade or a huge change? That's not going to happen in Bitcoin. It will take like easily 2 to 3 years to do any changes on Bitcoin. I mean, that's the beauty of it. Like that's why we love it, right? I mean, even you look at any so-called legacy system, and unfortunately, like the huge world, like a lot of people are relying on them, and it's hard to change. Like the reason why they are stable is because they don't change enough. Like they don't
Hmm.
change often, right?
Hmm.
But that's not the case with Ethereum. I mean, Ethereum keeps getting upgraded, like now and then, which is a good thing, right? Again, that's what I say, right? What is it, right? Bitcoin is the ultimate settlement layer. This is how I'm kind of seeing it. Um, I mean, Ethereum has its own uniqueness. I mean, it's doing fantastic job in terms of being what Ethereum wants to be, right?
I want to just detail a few things that you've mentioned in terms of applications. DeFi being the obvious one, because most crypto is being
Yes,
used for
yes, yes.
some sort of DeFi applications, app-specific rollup, specifically social fi, and this would be fairly similar to like your Cosmos, where you have different app chains
Yep.
within it,
Yes.
within the
Yeah.
IBC. GameFi is interesting because that is very interesting that people want to build GameFi chains or protocols on Bitcoin. Is that mainly because of the reward element of Bitcoin? People want to get BTC as a reward.
Yes. Yes. That drives it.
And
Like, and then another day, incentive drives everything, right? So yeah.
yeah, and rewards program again similar to the one that you mentioned earlier. Um, like one of the most interesting use cases of Bitcoin that I've seen in its own ecosystem, like without sort of an L2 or a roll up or anything beyond that, is payments, but not direct merchant payments, something like a bit refill where people
Yep.
buy
Yep.
it with Bitcoin and they can use it to sort of redeem gift vouchers for airlines or shopping or whatever. Um, that would be sort of merchant payments, right? So is that something that is also that you're seeing as a good use case? Maybe not specifically right now with Surge and its clients, but something that can evolve into?
I mean, that's I more see as a utility, right? Like, I mean, it's just like accepting Bitcoin as a payment, right?
Hmm.
If there's somebody like Lightning Network would become, I'm sure like a lot of these rollups, who are probably saying I'm more DeFi, I'm ZK and all this stuff, would try to get into that for sure, right? So that would be like a part of it. I'm not sure like will there be a chain dedicated for it? Maybe, right? So what's the whole roll up purpose, right? So it is to reduce the cost on the main Bitcoin. If you really want to like transact on the main Bitcoin, I mean it's going to be expensive. You don't know how things will change based on the demand. So yeah, I mean that I think the roll ups which will kind of become like like something like stacks or like anybody who is trying to become like the top 1 2 3 4 like 10 rollups or like the L2s on Bitcoin, they would target that as one of the important like utility, right? So where like people are using it for payments, right? And then yeah, they might redeem it for a gift card or they might redeem it for like the reward stuff, right? For probably membership. I mean, one more use case actually, like the loyalty points, right? Uh, that's another one. Like, I've come across this. I've come across this, like loyalty points. It's better to like put it on Bitcoin. You can still, after like ages, you can go back. That's the whole confidence. That's the whole loyalty, right? It's all centralized right now, right? So just think about like moving points from Emirates to Amex. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of effort. The other way around, right? It's not like permissionless. I mean, you need to like really go through so much to make it work. So yeah, I think that's the way I'm seeing it making it improbable. Let's say, who knows, like tomorrow, like, Emirates comes up and say like I'm launching a roll up for loyalty points and put all that on chain, and I'm like ultimately like settling on Bitcoin. So after 10 years, you come back and it's still there, right? If you want to like go and test it and like validate it, go ahead. Like it's the permissionless word, right? So hopefully, like probably like we'll get there soon.
If these many applications and this variety of applications are being built and roadmap is there for a lot of potentially Web 2 adoption, if not different
Yes,
use cases
yes,
within Web 3. Do you see a more institutional adoption uh,
yes.
of Bitcoin? We've seen Bitcoin ETFs and Bitcoin, others type of Bitcoin investment products go live, but not as a utility layer, right? Not as someone using it to settle on Bitcoin. Is this something that you see happening?
Yeah, I definitely see that as happening because first it all starts with getting into crypto, right? Like how people are getting into crypto, like I mean, institutions, they're all getting into crypto with BTC, right? You can see there's so much interest in ETFs and all these things, but ultimately, like people will realize, oh, you know what? I mean, I'm actually like reading a lot of conversations on like Reddit. People are talking, hey, I have this ETF. I'm thinking to like move out of it and like get it on somewhere else. Like, tell me like how do I do it in a self-control, like self-custody way, right? People are like chatting us, right? Like there's a huge thread going on, right? Talking like, hey, how do I get off and like put it on, probably in a hardware wallet or like put it in like a self-custody wallet, right? I'm sure like the institutions would probably get there as well. Like if this pattern been seen in individuals, and slowly it will get into like the bigger firms as well, right? And what do they do? Like they need utility, right? So now for them to like get utility, what is the way? Like WBDC, right? I mean it's more centralized. Like they would need something which is not centralized. I mean that will definitely act as a criteria. Like in which case they would prefer to have their own roll up or like have their own things than like trusting some WBTC or like some RAP BTC, right? So they would trust their own tech. Like, they might put up a tech team and say, hey, just put up a roll up, let's do like whatever we can do with the Bitcoin that is being deployed, like, or see is there an interoperability layer that we can move around. But at the end of the day, are we still under control, right? So I'm sure people would. That's why people get on Bitcoin, right? Like, why do they get on Bitcoin? Like to be under control. Like, they don't
Right.
want somebody controlling it. So I'm sure like there is utility coming on Bitcoin, right? So because it is getting serious, like it is important now. Like people are holding it. It is a store of value. Likewise, it will be a store of value. There will be the equal, like probably the utility side of things. As and this is all right. Like one guy kind of cracks everything, which is Ethereum, I see, and people are like adopting all that tech and and building it on Bitcoin. It's good. I mean, it's good for both.
But have institutions adopted Bitcoin as a building layer? We've seen like larger banks build their own private blockchains, JP Morgan being one of them. But that is more to, I think, as a settlement of their own books, right, with their own coin, JPM. Is there a way an institution, either on the investment side or some other side, adopts it to transact information? Sorry, not transact information, but send information from one place to another and to transact.
I mean, I've definitely not seen examples at like the productions because there are no any. I think once we hit one or two Bitcoin rollups mainnet, a lot of things would change, right? So if you observe, like there's a lot of argument or the dialogue going around. How do you even settle on Bitcoin, right? So there is somebody comes up and say, "Hey, I just settled on Bitcoin." Like, hey, look at it. Like this is the example, and there will be like 100 people like jumping on it saying, "Hey, no, 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 you're wrong," right? And then like there'll be another guy who comes up with another idea, right? I think that's the phase we are in, which shows a very clear indicator that we are heading towards getting real. Like what is real? Like one or two, a real roll-ups which are settling on Bitcoin at the end of the day, right? I think then the dynamics going to change. Then the dynamics change. I think now it's too early. The way I see it, like even like as a product, like we see like we are early, like probably not too early, but little early. But it's good. It's good to be early. Like you can still like put your act together and be prepared for that right time.
And have you seen these conversations happening? I know in the past few months you've been at Nashville for the Bitcoin conference as well as ETHCC at Brussels. Um, do you see these conversations happening more actively now, especially on the Bitcoin side?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the one big difference that I mean, I had been to the Bitcoin event in Hong Kong as well, but I think the one that I saw a huge difference in Nashville is, I mean, there are like non-developer people, right? who are in the conference, they are like talking normally, like, so okay, this is what happening, and this is what is happening in Bitcoin, like, and should I go and buy Bitcoin, like, where do I do it? And also there's so much enthusiast, I would say, like, Bitcoin enthusiast. So which is definitely missing in in our Ethereum conferences like ETC. That's pretty saturated. I mean, you see so many side events, so many tech talks happening with MPCs and all this stuff. And see the opposite, right? So there was a time where Bitcoin, people are talking about Bitcoin. I think there's one picture where like one speaker is talking. I don't know like who the developer is, and then the empty chairs for Bitcoin. And I feel like I felt the same in ETC. Like there are so many empty chairs and there are like speakers talking about their product or their innovation or whatnot. But in the Bitcoin case, it's a very diverse people, right? Like you have this enthusiast, you have miners, you have hardware guys, you have all these people like who are doing certain things on Bitcoin on like as a base layer, and then there are like roll up teams, and then there are there's L2 teams, and like the DeFi, there are people who are coming up with their own way of like solving things on Bitcoin, which looks pretty diverse, to be honest, right? And it's fun to like see, okay, there are even artists like putting it on inscription and like through inscription they are saying, yeah, this is artwork, you can have this inscription in Bitcoin also, like go and buy it, right? So I'm going to give you the artwork. So yeah, I mean that's a real adoption, right? Like what we saw in NFT and what Bitcoin inscriptions are like fundamentally very different, right? So yeah, I mean there is a good diversity so far.
You mentioned all
And
of those
I
things. You didn't mention VCs there.
even visas are there. Visas also, of course, they are there. They are there. Because when in East Denver, what I observed, like a lot of VCs were like, "Oh, okay, what is this Bitcoin? Like, what is this ecosystem? Like, what are they doing?" Like, there were very few Bitcoin events happening. I mean, that's how even I kind of like got into the whole Bitcoin rabbit hole. Um, but now, I mean, people are already like investing and like they already have their own thesis. They're like, but yeah, very few compared to like, they're still not like tier one, tier two VCs coming in, like, or I would say tier one. I think tier two are still are already here. Tier one VCs who are coming in and putting money into Bitcoin startups yet. I think that's still slow, but I think we get there. Like, I think it's a good, steady, slow, but it's happening. I mean, that's what makes it interesting.
And their thesis, when putting money, regardless of if they're tier one, two, or three, my assumption would be that it would that their thesis would be similar to how Ethereum is a settlement layer. Is it something that's similar, or would they see some sort of wider adoption?
So I mean, they're just looking in two way, right? Like, okay, there are a set of people who are making Bitcoin programmable, right? There are a set of projects who are trying to do it, and then there are set of projects who are trying to unlock the dormant, capital or make it capital efficient, right? How can I make it capital efficient, right? I think these are two themes at least I've come across, right? People like going after, Bitcoin as a programmable layer. Another one is more like, okay, how do I make it capital efficient, right? So yeah, these are like broader themes or theses that I've come across. And then otherwise, I think there's a lot of little bit of FOMO still. I mean, there was a FOMO in Bitcoin space, right? Like, people are missing out. Oh, okay, like, well, let me put in like, Bitcoin startup, what they are doing because they still don't understand. Because of that lack of understanding, like still there's a little bit of FOMO that happens. And there are like still new theses that are coming up, right? So for example, like this Galaxy.com came up with this thesis that there will be very few roll-ups. There will be many, right? So yeah, the theses are pretty broad. Like, there are broader theses to like very specific theses, like, just focus on roll-ups.
It's good with that there are broad theses that are going around, because at least that gives people more room to grow and more room to build,
Yep, yep,
such as
yep,
yours.
yep.
I'm sure you have your own thesis with how Bitcoin is developing or will develop, and you're building search towards that thesis. Is there any specific roadmap that you're looking at to build?
We are looking at, is there will be like a lot of demand for roll-ups, right? Not just this, you know, the current demand that we're looking at. There will be like more app-specific roll-ups where a very different type of institution, which is not like a non-financial institution, want to like try something. Yes, Bitcoin could be the ultimate settlement, right? If once it becomes real. And of course, like the guys who are holding on Bitcoin as institutions, it's more finance focused. I'm sure they also want to like try a lot of stuff. That'll also another demand that will come up. And yeah, I see like two types of projects that are spinning up, right? Like one is saying, hey, I'm like having a, I mean, they're actually at the end of their roll up because they are, if you do computation of 10, you're a roll up, right? At the end of the day, like, or you do it in any way, right? So, so there are some people who are saying, hey, I'm building like probably a layer about Bitcoin and you build your innovation on it. Or like us who are saying, okay, like just build a roll up because it's
Mhm.
easy. Like, it's as equal as, building a protocol now. Like, there was also an argument, right? Rollups are smart contracts. There was this thing going on for a while. And it's true. It is true. I mean, that's
And
what the
that's
teams
the
like Surge is doing, right? That's what the Surge is doing. We are making it so easy, just like deploying a smart contract.
infrastructure being built for people to come and build other things is certainly important. We've seen Eigenlayer do
Yeah.
that with security, when areas can just come and just be secure and they can do whatever they want. They don't have to launch like a governance
Yeah.
token or bootstrap security in any way. And you're doing that in a different chain, but with the same end
Yes.
goal. Where we'll create infrastructure so
Yes.
that
Yes.
anybody can come in and sort of
Yes.
build whatever they'd like. And that's for me the easiest way to think about this. And but you've given several ways for anyone on the client side, on the user side, on the developer side to sort of come understand this. So I think this has been a very useful conversation for me at least, and for the developer who's listening to this. If people want to know more about Surge and they want to either read your docs or want to get in touch, how can they reach out?
I mean, we have put up a Telegram chat, right? A group already. We have Twitter, like, we've been catching up. Yeah, I think these are two places to like reach us out.
So it's Surge Build on Twitter, and your
Yep, search build on Twitter, and same thing on Telegram as well, like search build. Yeah,
we'll be sure to link this wherever this is posted. Pure has
yep,
also written the first of many reports with Surge on Bitcoin scalability. We have upcoming reports on Bitcoin tooling, on how to build a better, more scalable Bitcoin for a utility layer, and an
yep,
analysis of several other L2s, rollups, or scalability solutions that are currently in effect, and how Surge compares. So do check that out. Once those
yep,
are
yep,
live, we'll
definitely.
be sure to link this as well.
Yeah,
Thanks so much, Yash, for this fantastic conversation. And good luck with what you and the team are doing at Surge.
thanks for having me.